Hi, my name's Michelle. I'm doing a few little videos on what life is like with an NJ tube. And I've had a bit of a shocking week this week, so I thought it was a good chance to talk about what life is like with an NJ tube when you're sick, when you're not well. So I will be talking about a few symptoms when you're sick. So if you're a bit squeamish, I'd say this isn't the video for you. And I do want to say that, I'm doing these videos to raise sort of a bit of awareness and give people an insight into what life is like with the tube, but I have no medical training whatsoever. So please do listen to your medical professionals over anything I say in these. So yeah, a little bit about what it's like when you're sick with an NJ tube in. So I have gastroparesis, and some of the key symptoms for me is nausea, vomiting, and stomach pain. Now, the NJ tube has been a great support in terms of, nutritionally supporting me while I work with my medical team to get my stomach working again. But it doesn't actually cure gastroparesis. So you are still going to come up with some days where you have some bad vomiting and things like that. So this week I've been throwing up the water I'm, using to take my medications and stuff like that. Um, Whereas, I've had other great weeks where I've been able to, wean my feeds down quite well. But it's just the nature of the beast with this disease that you can have some bad times. Um, as far as, the experience of that with an NJ tubing, I will say it is definitely a lot easier. When you have gastroparesis and no NJ tube and you can't eat or you can't drink anything and keep it in, it's a pretty bad situation there in terms of your nourishment and your hydration levels. Because this tube goes past my stomach into my small bowel, um, when I've been throwing up, anything I'm putting down the tube has thankfully stayed in my system, which is fantastic. So it's only anything going into my stomach that is coming back up. So this means two things. The first is I don't have to try and eat or drink anything when I'm having these days. I can just hook up my feed, run that, and then when that's done, I can hook up a decanting bag full of water and run that through so that I don't have to put my stomach through the pain and trauma of attempting to force feed myself while it doesn't want to take anything in. So that has been, such a massive relief. Um, and it's just such a relief to know that I'm still getting all the nutrition I need and all the hydration I need. So that's been a real positive with sickness with the NJ tube. The only negative I can really say is, the first few times you throw up while you have the tube in place, it feels a bit awful. You get used to the tube being in your throat and in your nose, and you don't really feel it much after a little while. But when you throw up, it can move the placement, and that feeling of the tube in there while your body's trying to bring things up, it for me makes it feel like there's something stuck in there. And the way I coped with that was just really breathing through it, really just repeating in my head, there's nothing stuck, it's just your tube, you're okay, you can still breathe, and just calming that mental response to feeling like there's something stuck in there. Um, and I have gotten used to the feeling of throwing up with the tube in now, so it's not a particularly traumatic experience anymore. It's just the first few times, it's certainly not what I call pleasant. But all in all, having the tube in has been a massive support for me. One of the most surprising things I found about being unwell with the tube is you still do get quite fatigued. I always thought all the throwing up and everything, the fatigue was coming mostly because I wasn't getting any nutrition. And I have fared a lot better on my sickness days since getting the tube in, but I've still managed to get pretty tired on my like sickness days, or for me they tend to come in a run of a few days. So yeah, after a few days I'm pretty tired still, and that did surprise me. So if you do have a tube in, and if you are having some really rough stomach days and throwing up, just be kind to yourself. Understand that that whole process of your stomach being that upset and all that pain you're still in is going to take a hit on your energy levels, despite the fact you're getting food in. The last thing I'd say about sickness days with gastroparesis in general, if you're like me and you happen to have type 1 diabetes, it just makes your blood sugar management a whole lot more complicated. Um, so in a very simple way of explaining it, managing type 1 diabetes is all about matching the amount of insulin in your body to the amount of carbohydrates in your body. And when you're having a bad flare with your stomach, um, it's really hard to match that, both in terms of timing, because if your stomach's really delayed, it's going to take longer for the carbohydrates that you're physically orally eating to hit your bloodstream. So you can't just give insulin either just before you eat or at the same time as you eat, which is what I normally do. You've got to wait until you can see that it's actually hitting your bloodstream before you can give insulin confidently. And the other massive part is you have to wait until you know you're going to keep the food in. Um, because if you throw it up and you've got that insulin in your bloodstream, you can't take that away. So you get into this awful position where you need to kind of estimate how many grams of carbohydrates you've thrown up, and then start trying to replace them. And if you're throwing that up, it just becomes this horrible cycle of doing that. Um, so yeah, that's one of the other challenges with the sickness day and gastroparesis with type 1 diabetes. And that's been really amazing to have the NJ tube in place for that too, because if I am in this constant, sort of battle of throwing up everything I'm putting in, I've got my trusty old tube. I can pop it down there and know that it's going to hit my bloodstream. So if you found this video helpful, please give me a like, subscribe to my channel so I know that this content is useful for somebody out there, and thanks very much for watching.